Choose a man to fight me. If he wins, we will serve you. But if I defy the armies of Israel this day.
Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?
Is there no man among you able to fight me? Please, no. Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?
You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the...
The sun rose over the rugged hills of Judah, spreading its golden light across the valley of Elah. This valley, vast and dry, had become the tense meeting ground for two great armies. On one hill to the north, the Israelites had set up their camp, their tents stretching across the slope like a small city of weary warriors. On the southern ridge stood the camp of the Philistines, a people fierce in battle, their weapons gleaming, their banners waving high. Day after day, the armies had faced one another across the valley floor, but neither side dared to advance. Fear hung in the air like a heavy cloud. The Israelites, though chosen by God, trembled at the sight of their enemy. The Philistines, bold and ruthless, relied on one warrior, a man whose name would echo through history: Goliath. Goliath was unlike any man they had ever seen. Standing over 9 feet tall, he towered above the tallest of Israel's soldiers. His bronze helmet shone like fire in the morning sun. Day after day, Goliath came forward. His booming voice shook the valley as he mocked Israel and defied their God. Why do you line up for battle?
Choose a man to fight me. If he wins, we will serve you. But if I win, you will be our slaves.
The Israelites trembled. Fear seized even their greatest warriors. King Saul himself, though taller than any of his men and once a courageous leader, now sat in silence within his tent, his face shadowed with worry. Each time Goliath roared, the men of Israel retreated a little farther, their courage melting away. For 40 days, morning and evening, Goliath taunted them. 40 days of insults, 40 days of fear, 40 days where no one stepped forward. But God was preparing someone unexpected. Not a soldier, not a warrior, but a young shepherd boy named David. His hands were more familiar with the strings of a harp than the hilt of a sword. Yet his heart was full of courage, not because of his own strength, but because of his faith in the Lord Almighty. Far from the battlefield, the hills of Bethlehem stretched wide with green pastures and rocky paths. Here, the sheep of Jesse, a respected man of the tribe of Judah, grazed under the watchful eye of his youngest son. His name was David. David was not like his older brothers, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah, men tall and strong who followed King Saul into battle. David's life was quieter. He rose with the dawn, guided the sheep to pasture, played melodies on his harp, and sang songs of worship to the Lord beneath the open sky. Yet, though his duties seemed small, God was shaping him for something far greater. David loved his sheep dearly. When wild animals threatened them, he did not run. With courage and quickness, he struck down lions and bears that came to steal from the flock. His sling, a simple strip of leather, never missed its mark. One morning, Jesse called David from the fields. The father, aged but strong, looked at his youngest son with kind eyes. David obeyed without hesitation. He rose early the next morning, left his sheep with another shepherd, and set out for the battlefield. His heart was filled with excitement. He had never seen the army of Israel gathered for war, and though still young, he longed to see the Lord's power displayed. The road was long and dusty. When David finally reached the valley, the scene before him was unlike anything he had imagined. Tents stretched across the hillside like a sea of fabric.
I defy the armies of Israel this day.
is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?
His eldest brother, Eliab, scowled at him. David was taken aback, but he answered calmly. As Eliab's words faded, David's ears caught something else. Once again, Goliath had stepped forward, his voice rumbling like thunder. The challenge rang across the valley, and David's heart burned with righteous anger.
How could this giant insult the armies of the living God?
And so, the shepherd boy, who had come only to deliver bread and cheese, found himself standing at the edge of history. He did not yet know how God would use him, but deep in his heart, he felt it. This was his moment. The Lord Almighty would show his power, and David would not remain silent. The camp of Israel was restless as evening shadows stretched across the valley. Soldiers sharpened their swords with weary hands, their eyes darting nervously toward the Philistine lines. The laughter of Goliath echoed once again, mocking, taunting, daring any man to step forward. Yet no one moved. Fear had chained their courage, but David, young and unarmored, stood with fire in his heart. He could not believe what he was seeing. God's people shrinking back while a godless giant defied the living Lord. He asked again and again, "Who will fight this man? Does no one trust the Lord to give victory?" His words stirred whispers through the camp until finally they reached the ears of King Saul. Saul commanded that David be brought before him. The soldiers obeyed, though they laughed under their breath at the sight of the boy. They escorted him into the king's tent. David entered humbly, bowing before the king, yet his eyes burned with conviction. Saul studied him with disbelief. This boy could barely lift a sword, and yet he spoke as though fire itself lived in his chest. A bronze helmet was placed upon David's head, and a heavy coat of armor was strapped onto his small frame. A sword was buckled at his side. But as David took a few steps, the armor clattered, awkwardly, too heavy for his young body. With quiet resolve, David removed the armor piece by piece. He laid the helmet, the coat, and the sword aside. Instead, he reached for the tools he knew well: his shepherd's staff, his sling, and the pouch at his belt. Then, walking to the nearby brook, David bent low and carefully chose 5 smooth stones. He turned each one in his hand, weighing it with care before placing them into his pouch. These simple stones, guided by the hand of the Almighty, would be enough. As David prepared to step onto the battlefield, the camp buzzed with disbelief. Some soldiers mocked him, others pitied him, but a few whispered, "Could it be? Could God use this boy?" David, however, heard none of their voices. His heart was fixed on the Lord. The same God who had given him strength in the wilderness would give him victory in the valley. With each step toward the battlefield, David was not walking alone. The armies of heaven marched with him. The tent of King Saul fell into a hushed stillness after David's bold declaration.
"And the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion, the lion and the paw of the bear.
Go, and the Lord be with you."
Saul's eyes, though heavy with uncertainty, carried a flicker of reluctant trust. Around them, commanders and soldiers exchanged bewildered glances. Could this shepherd boy truly confront the Philistine giant who had terrified them for 40 days? For on the opposite ridge, Goliath had once again emerged, towering above the Philistine army, his bronze armor glinting like fire in the sun. His laughter rumbled as he saw movement among the Israelites. David walked with measured steps, his sling ready, his staff in hand. His eyes never wavered. In the distance, Goliath noticed him too, and a sneer curled across the giant's lips. To Goliath, this was an insult.
Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?
You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of
David, however, saw things differently. He saw the battlefield as the stage where God's power would be revealed, where the living Lord would show that victory does not come by might or size, but by his Spirit. The valley of Elah trembled with noise. On one side, the Philistine army erupted into mocking laughter, their voices like thunder rolling across the hills. Goliath's face twisted with rage. His massive legs carried him forward, each step shaking the ground. He raised his spear, ready to end the boy's life in one swift strike. But David did not retreat. He ran quickly toward the giant, closing the distance with fearless determination. His hand reached into his pouch, fingers curling around one smooth stone. In a single motion, he placed it in the sling. The cords tightened, and he began to whirl it in swift, powerful arcs. The sound of the sling cutting through the air rose sharply, mingling with the pounding of his feet against the earth. For a moment, silence swallowed the battlefield. Both armies froze in disbelief. Could it be true, the undefeatable giant fallen at the hand of a shepherd boy? David did not hesitate. He ran forward, determination blazing in his eyes. Standing over the fallen warrior, he grasped Goliath's massive sword, straining under its weight. With one swift motion, he brought it down, severing the head of the Philistine champion. A gasp rippled through the valley, followed by a roar of triumph from the Israelites.
The valley echoed not with mockery, but with shouts of praise to the God of Israel.